Today, we live in a world that is incredibly difficult to tune out. With the rise of the internet, social media, and devices that allow us to stay connected to the entire world at virtually all times, it can become impossible to spend time with yourself that is truly alone. It also does not help that, collectively, as a society, we have become addicted to these devices, and upon having a single anxious thought, we immediately flock to them to mindlessly scroll, watch television, message our friends, or do some other activity that creates a barrier between one's consciousness and their own feelings. And while it can seem so right to find comfort in talking to others or enjoying a good show on Netflix when we feel stressed, which totally can be a good thing to do at times, I'm not denying that, constantly running from solitude, from experiencing ourselves and our mind as it is, unobstructed by any external source, is not a healthy way of living. When we consistently flock to external sources to feel good about ourselves, we are left with an incomplete seeing of our internal world, which leaves us with unresolved feelings and lack of understanding of ourselves. And as a result, we create a life in alignment with these unconscious, repressed, and alienated feelings, leading to all sorts of dysfunction and suffering. There's a reason that an array of studies show that people who spend more time alone display more self-resilience, have a stronger sense of identity, and a heightened sense of independence. This is simply because people who spend quality alone time have explored their mind enough to know who they are, what they're about, and in some capacity have developed the courage to dig into their emotions even when it gets painful. And if you're trying to become your greatest version, if you're trying to self-actualize, the way in which you spend your alone time is going to be one of the largest determining factors of your success. So I invite you to embark on a journey of inner exploration, of increasing awareness, of getting to know yourself, and cultivating the ability to fully feel into your emotions. In doing this, you will have to transcend the ego's sneakiest defense mechanism, which is distraction. In my life, I have found that emotions my mind loves to distract itself from feeling are fear, boredom, confusion, sadness, and frustration. Basically, any emotion that you tend to label as negative is what, from a young age, you have built up habits to immediately distract yourself from feeling. But the thing is, these emotions are there for a reason. A part of you is in conflict, and how do you expect to resolve the conflict if you don't fully see it first, if you don't dive into your emotions to actually understand what is going on? To transcend distraction and fully feel your internal world, you will have to become aware of the mechanisms of distraction your mind uses. For me, these patterns of distractions are included, but are not limited to, scrolling social media, watching YouTube, daydreaming, talking with friends, playing video games, masturbating, snacking, smoking, etc. And I find it important not to label these tendencies that we have as good nor bad. They only exist because the ego is protecting itself from the harm it perceives the felt emotion to be. And we can't blame the ego for this, considering that it's the ego's job to seek out the things that serve itself and avoid the things that are bad for itself. But the thing is, in this work, there needs to be a drive, a sort of spiritual drive to rise above our own ego and have the courage to feel our feelings fully. Probably one of the most important lessons I have learned in my life is that at the root of all suffering is a failure to fully feel what is. And in suffering, there's always some part of oneself that is in denial, wishing for things to be different, and not fully accepting and embracing what is in the present moment. And obviously, it is so incredibly difficult to fully accept what is, because what is can be at odds with what we want and what we desire. But at a minimum, it's still better to be aware of what you cannot accept than to not be aware at all because you distracted yourself from fully feeling whatever was going on. And don't just take my word for it. Go meditate and see for yourself how just feeling fully is going to change your life. But before you go and do that and try it for yourself, I would like to share with you a few things. At the end of this video, I'm going to provide you some tips about how to spend your alone time most effectively. And feel free to skip there if you want. I'll have the chapters in the video bar where it divides up the video. But first, I'm going to share with you the journey of my healing and spiritual expansion that came about as a result of spending quality alone time with myself. So in high school, I will say I was a master at distracting myself. I would numb myself with pornography, random YouTube videos that provided no value to my life, Netflix. I'd play video games, and I would mindlessly scroll Instagram. And I still do these things to a degree. I am far from perfect, don't get me wrong, but I did them to the degree that I did in high school because I was operating from a deep lack of self-worth. And at the time, I hardly even knew that this was the core problem because I had distracted myself from it so deeply. I wouldn't feel deep into myself, and I just was in denial. But anyways, I mostly unconsciously was always operating in a state of competition. I was constantly comparing myself to others, and in order to feel worthy, I always felt that I had to look the best, be the coolest, be the funniest, smartest, and have the hottest girlfriend. And everything that I did during this time, in retrospect, was to fill this void. And I like to make the analogy that I was always trying to make my cup full, even though it was leaking. So it became a never-ending process of filling. And because looking to others to feel whole is a game that you can never ultimately win, when I wouldn't live up to my highly unrealistic ideals, I would feel terrible about myself. And to distract myself from the negative feelings that would arise, I would indulge in the quick dopamine hits that porn, video games, and other online content would provide. But in my sophomore year of high school, I started dating this girl, and this was like the ultimate fill for me. When I got with her, I felt an enormous surge in confidence and self-worth, and I just started feeling a lot happier and maybe somewhat close to this feeling of being whole, so to speak. But ultimately, this all proved to be extremely fragile and came crashing down very quickly when she broke up with me only a few months later, probably because of my unconscious neediness and obsession with her in order to feel good about myself. And when that happened, my entire world shattered, and I entered into probably the darkest time of my life, but also a time of my life that I was so incredibly grateful for. The suffering was so deep that I literally contemplated suicide at times, but eventually the intense pain thrust the core issue into my awareness, giving me the precise realization that I needed in order to heal, and that was that I was terribly reliant on others to feel validated and whole, especially romantic partners, and if I wanted to feel better, I had to start working towards the things that mattered to me intrinsically, and while that change was far from night and day, now, several years later, I look back on that past self as if he lived an entire lifetime ago. I came out of the intense suffering with greatly heightened empathy for the world. I deepened my interest in psychology, philosophy, politics, and spirituality, all of which inspired me to use my life to be a transformer of society. And I now feel that my purpose for living is so strong and so intrinsically motivated that never again could I put so much energy into being shallowly validated by others in order to feel whole. Not that I live completely free of this need now, but just now my internal metric of success has completely shifted. But the key lesson in all this is awareness. When this girl broke up with me, I became very depressed. I spent lots and lots of time alone, and the pain was so deep that I couldn't just distract myself from it. It was always there. I was always feeling it, and I had no choice but to feel it. I was always thinking about it, constantly in rumination, and doing stream of consciousness writings and going on walks in nature helped me feel even more of what I was already feeling and helped me gain fresh perspectives on the situation. And ultimately, after a lot of time, I got over it and I moved on. And I did engage in these distractive tendencies during this time for sure, with all porn and the video games and all of this, lots and lots. And I'm sure if I knew how to meditate and knew the power of feeling my feelings fully at this time, I'm sure I could have gotten over the issue much quicker. But through the passage of time, lots of suffering, many streams of consciousness writings, and lots of nature walks that helped me become more aware of myself and my feelings and my problems, I got over it and was a completely transformed person afterwards. What I'm saying in all of this is that awareness is the ultimate healer, and that the reason spending time alone is quite literally a modern superpower is because in our world there are all these distractions literally everywhere, and if you can overcome these distractions and dive deep within your mind and have the courage to feel what's in there, you're going to solve your internal problems much quicker, you're going to be a lot happier, and just live more freely and authentically, and just without all these burdens, all these shackles on you. And awareness being the ultimate healer is not just something I'm saying because it helped me. If you look into the realm of therapy, really no matter what type of therapy that someone engages in, the fundamental mechanism behind improvement in client outcome is becoming more aware. So what therapy typically involves is coming into contact with shadow feelings or false and distorted scripts, narratives, and beliefs that someone operates under, and nothing can actually change until they first come into contact with those elements. And then when you do come into contact with those repressed, alienated, and distorted aspects of yourself, you can see how they influence you, and then through work, through the process, you can let them go. So The last thing I want to talk about here is just a few methods you can engage in to increase your awareness of your inner world. The one that I've been doing most consistently is stream of consciousness writings, as I mentioned earlier. For this one, just open a document on your computer and just start writing. You don't need to think about anything. You just type, completely unobstructed, no filter at all. I find this method to be the quickest and most effective way to get to the root of my suffering and start postulating solutions accordingly. And there's something about getting the thoughts out of my head and into physical reality that gives them just more potency and more realness for me. Of course, you can write in a journal too, but I find typing to be better for keeping up with the pace of the mind. And, I find with the notion about bringing physical thoughts into reality, giving them more potency, that I'd always find, like, when I was typing, there'd be certain things that would come to my mind and I didn't want to type them because I was scared of admitting them. I was afraid of bringing them into reality and making them feel more real, because that would bring conflict, that would bring suffering, that would bring hardship to my life. But I've learned that you just need to completely let your mind go, completely just be in a flow state, no filter at all when you do these stream of conscious writings, because what needs to come to the surface will come to the surface. And if you have a filter in doing this, the work's not going to get done properly, basically. Another method, which I've been doing for a while and also mentioned earlier, is nature walks. For me, this has been the most effective method for just bringing fresh perspectives into a situation I'm dealing with. An analogy I used in a prior video, I said that nature sort of expands the filter your thoughts run through. So for me, it feels like I gain access to a greater, more holistic perspective of myself and my life from these walks, which I recommend doing alone, so it's just you and your thoughts unobstructed. But I come away from these nature walks just typically feeling very replenished and ready to tackle whatever is next. I don't think anyone ever went out into nature intentionally and felt worse after. Another great one, and this is more traditional, is sitting meditation. This one is great for getting in touch with the transient nature of reality, in that with meditation, you simply just sit with what is, you observe it, and you watch it pass away. This method is also just a very practical way of easing the mental state and putting one into a more tranquil state of consciousness, because you can do it pretty quickly and in the comfort of your own home. You don't got to go out into nature, or you don't have to go on your computer or something. It's something you can just do really quick and easy, just for 10 minutes if you know how to do it effectively. Just the other morning, I was completely overwhelmed by how busy my day was, but after sitting for 15-20 minutes, I was put into a state of mind that allowed me to just flow through my tasks for the day rather than being in resistance to them. And this method, when done effectively and consistently, can also be much deeper than the other methods I have said so far, because basically when you're in a deep meditative state, you can probe so deep into yourself that you unearth insights that completely shake your sense of self and reality. And if you want more insight on this method, I would recommend checking out my other video about my 10-day Vipassana retreat experience, where what the title of the video says, I meditated for pretty much nonstop for 10 days. So these 3 methods are a few that you can use to get started in your journey of developing the superpower of spending quality alone time. There are plenty of other methods out there as well, so do more research, practice, and find what works for you. That's all I have for today, guys. And lastly, I want to mention that if you want help in developing more awareness, reaching a certain goal in your life, or seeking some fresh perspectives, or just seeking some sort of deeper purpose that you feel is there but you can't quite articulate yet, I would highly recommend consider booking a coaching call with me. I've helped dozens so far, and I'm eager to help more people. So if that interests you, head to the coaching tab of my website. The link is going to be in the description for more info. And that's all I have for today, guys. Have a great day and peace.